Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G, as always, joined by my wonderful co-host, Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi guys, what's up?
And this month, we have two really amazing guests with us. I'm super excited. Our topic this month is indie and small press publishers. And so we have Matt from Starfruit Books.
Hello.
And Emuh from Glacier Bay Books.
Hi.
We are so excited to have you guys join us, honestly. We've been really just like, oh
excited.
My gosh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's exciting.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, definitely a good time. Going to be a good time. So
just before we get into questions and things like that, would you like to, I guess, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your particular publisher, some of the titles you release, and anything that anyone might want to know?
Feel free to plug any new titles as well.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to go first, Matt?
sure. Hi everyone, my name's Matt. I am the founder and CEO of Starfruit Books. We are a small publisher located in Florida. Mainly, so far, we are doing digital titles. We do have some print titles starting to come out this month and next month, and a few towards the end of the year. We're known for Pop Life by Minami Kyuta, works by Kakio Surukawa, like Sabanabe Zombie, Ikyuro, Mahou Shoujo Sunday by Momoto Makuru, and all kinds of other things. All of our titles are available DRM free and sold directly through our website, so definitely check us out.
And the websites for both will be in the description below, just by the way.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Emuh, and I run Glacier Bay Books, and like Starfruit, we're a small publisher. Kind of do a range of titles, trying to do both print and digital as much as possible. Maybe some of our more well-known works would be we do a anthology series called Glaolia, which is kind of like an in-house publication, which runs like a lot of short stories from lesser known authors. Otherwise, let's see, I think Children of Mutown we released in April, and I think that's kind of pretty well known out of all of our titles. I think a lot of people are interested in that one. And then we've put out Ripples. We put out a series of stories, maybe called Sleepy Child Stories, from Shinosuke Saika, and we started putting out a so far digital only work called Inshan's House, and we recently put out the first volume of that, and it's kind of gotten a bit of acclaim. It was nominated for an award. It's right now it's digital only. I think hopefully we're gonna do a print version, but there's if anyone who's read it would know, there's like a lot of complications because it was originally produced for digital, and it's got like different page sizes, and they're all like very vertical and designed to be like read kind of scrolling almost. So there's a lot of work that will go into making a print version. And then Rabbit Game recently, it's kind of a short novella, and we announced a bunch of new titles. But I guess, I'm rambling. Maybe the new stuff that's coming out very soon to know about is we're doing a kind of a graphic novel-sized, one-volume book called F, with a really unknown author, Imai Arata, and that's translated by Ryan Holmberg, and that is like, we're looking at the final draft right now. I think probably last cuts. I'm hoping to put out an announcement very soon. We released this very short digital collection last year called Tsukiko and the Satellite and Other Stories, and and we're going to do an expanded print version. So that's a bunch of short stories by Mississippi, and I'm like re-editing that and creating the print version, and so hopefully that'll come out really soon. And there are a couple. I mean, there are a couple other things that are like really close, but I don't want to like overcommit because because there are factors that are undetermined. But we're also working on the third Glaolia volume. So we put out 2 of those. We've got the third one. We don't have a date set, but I think pretty soon there will be more news on that. So that's pretty exciting.
I, for one, am very excited for Glaolia 3, just by the way.
Awesome.
Same here. I can't wait for it. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's definitely like on my list for the year.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for that. And again, thanks for joining us. So, of the 2 of Ray and I think it's kind of somewhat well known that I'm probably the one a bit more not invested, but I typically am the one who talks a little bit more about both Glacier Bay and Starfruit, just because I've read a lot. I own and have read a lot of your titles. I love so many of your titles. Obviously Glaolia, but I think I have every single release Glacier Bay has put out. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I do. And Starfruit, I've read numerous. Honestly, Pop Life is still my favorite. Very, very excited for your print releases. Even though shipping will kill me, but I am very excited for them. But yeah, so I think it's no secret that I'm a big fan. The amount of really interesting titles that you do manage to release is a really nice small part of the community that I think is seeing a lot of growth, and hopefully that translates to the side that you guys are on. You see that. And I'm sure we'll get a little bit into that in questions. But Ray, as sort of the novice,
Yeah.
how has your experience been?
Yeah, so this is kind of like a spiritual successor to our Natsume Ono podcast episode, where it was like, a mangaka that G knew a lot about and had read a lot of titles from, and I was basically dipping in for the first time and read a whole bunch before, so I went ahead and read a handful of titles from both of y'all in preparation for this podcast, as someone who always is so intrigued looking at what you pick up on Twitter, but never actually had taken the plunge to get them. I think I enjoyed everything that I read. So I read from Starfruit, I read Pop Life, I read is it monthly Shoujo Sunday?
Yeah, good choices.
And then I read The Town You Live In as well. And then from Glacier Bay I read Mutown, which I actually had been planning to pick up separately. What did I read? Dear Sarah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I read Ripples, which I really enjoyed. I think that was probably my favorite that I read.
Oh, that's really cool.
I liked that one a lot.
I always love hearing people's reactions to Ripples, because you get a spread.
I bet. But I really enjoyed it. So.
Awesome.
And then I read Rabbit Game, which I also really enjoyed. I really enjoy that weird, surreal, almost absurdist style of story. So I also enjoyed Monthly Shoujo Sunday a lot as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's another one that it gets kind of you either hate it or you love it, I feel. And, so it's like, it's a little more on the experimental side, but I think it's definitely a great read, and it's definitely pretty wacky, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I, as a fan of, like, I guess I'm pretty well known for being a fan of, like, classic shoujo manga. So, I recognized basically everything it was parodying, so I was kind of just laughing along with it. With each chapter, like, yep. It almost goes through, like, a history of, like, mainstream shoujo manga in what it's parodying.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that it touches on a lot of the, a lot of the themes and stuff like that in your classic shoujo, and especially the expressions and stuff like that, facial expressions and bodily expressions, which I really liked. So
yeah, there's a panel where, like, the girl responds to her mother turning into, like, an alligator alien or something, and she just, like, barfs flies.
Yeah.
And I've been using that as a reaction image. So yeah, I don't think there was anything where I was like, I do not like this. I enjoyed all the different styles, and was, grateful to be given an excuse to finally actually, step into reading some of y'all's books. So it's been a fun experience.
I'm glad. I mean,
Awesome.
that's always nice to hear, people who take the plunge, I guess you could say, and, I sometimes on Twitter people comment, like, or I'll get an email or see something like, oh, they'll buy one thing and then they'll come back and buy a couple more because they realize, like, hey, just because they're newer or smaller doesn't mean that they're lacking in quality or anything like that. So it's definitely nice to see people doing that because we have a lot of repeat customers. So that's great.
I'll definitely be keeping a closer eye than I had been before on the new releases, and probably pick up more, I'm sure.
Honestly, half the reason I do this podcast is to convince Ray to read things that she wouldn't otherwise be reading, and successfully converting her.
Hey.
It's not like
Same
you don't...
though.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's not like you don't do the exact same thing.
Yeah, we share a brain cell, after all.
So, with that, I think we'll get into questions, because we did get so many wonderful questions from everyone. And thank you, everyone who did send in a question, as always. We really appreciate it.
So first we have a couple different questions from @Cassiano-CE. First question is, how long does it take from contacting an author or license agency to the book being printed and shipped?
Well, let me start on that because, one, I know who commented that, and two, well, okay, so it can take a while. Okay, so let's go by example. One that I've worked on took about 7 or 8 months to just really solidify everything and really get it going. I won't exactly say which title it was, but it did take about 7 or 8 months, and that was I wouldn't say frustrating. It's just like it's a lot of back and forth. And to get the ball rolling. And when it finally did, it was good. But yeah, it took about 7 or 8 months, I would say.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, without getting into too much specifics on anything in particular, but I mean, I would say it can vary a lot. Sometimes, I guess, sometimes it's a simple, simple kind of license to request or work, and, and maybe if you're contacting the author, there's less back and forth in some cases. And so you can kind of see sometimes you can see faster turnaround, but more realistically, like, I have some things where maybe I contacted about a work that I'm interested in, and like, they're still figuring out who would be the proper contact point for the license for the work, because it's still being figured out on the original side in Japan. So it's like there can be like discussion that like goes on for months before you can have your discussion in the first place, and then your discussion can take months, and then once you have that nailed down, you have to work on it, which takes some time. And then right now, I'm looking at printing some books and contacting printers, and like there's like a long queue for the printer that I've worked with in the past, where I used to just be able to send them something and they could work on it next week or whatever. It's I'm not trying to complain, but like like sometimes it can be quick, and other times it can be it can take a while.
And I would suspect that COVID has really impacted a lot of that industry as well.
Yeah, there's just basically everything you do, if you're working smaller, you maybe have to go through multiple layers of communication. Maybe you're if you're contacting the author, maybe they have to confirm with someone else, or maybe you're contacting the publisher, but they want to do negotiations through an external party because they're also small, or because it's the way they usually do things. There are so many reasons, but now you have like 3 different layers of communication, and it's just it's what it is. It's fine, but it can take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone working on a small scale has to work to protect their own assets, I suppose.
Yeah.
I guess I am a little curious. You can answer in whatever detail you want to, but like, what sort of difficulties has this global pandemic brought about when it comes to sort of small press printing and the like?
Personally, right now, like with our printer for When Pink Rain Falls, our title coming out, hopefully, looks like it'll be a little sometime next month. They are a small printer in general, and I guess COVID's really impacting them. I did hear back from him because it got a little bit delayed, and he said, he did have 1 or 2 people out, and it really did hinder the whole process. So that was really interesting, because at first I was like, I didn't know what their staff's anything like that, but it was just interesting, and he was saying that, and just materials. Like I said, I've only really had to deal with this one printer, so I don't know across the board, but he had some issues, or not, I wouldn't even say issues, it was just delays on getting some materials, so.
Yeah, I would say my experience, I think I've done a couple books print, it's kind of since COVID. But yeah, I guess I could give some particulars. So, for instance, Glacier 1, reaching way, way back into the recesses of memory, was actually coming out right when COVID really ramped up in the U.S., which would be April. I'm trying to remember what the original date it was supposed to come out on. Well, it came out. It was finished printing around the end of July, like last week of July. And so we released it in the beginning of June. But I think it was delayed 1.5 months because there was a stay-home order, and so the printers couldn't work. They'd started working on it, and then Seattle was shut down, and because they're based in Seattle, they couldn't print, and so we just waited. So that was a while back. Since then, I have printers I've worked with where now they have long queues of maybe a month-long wait. Once I request a job, so I kind of have to factor that in, which can be a little tough because some of them are kind of I stack jobs together. So with Rabbit Game and False Stars, for example, I printed those with an international printer, but I kind of stacked the jobs so that they could be done around the same time and shipped together in order to reduce the overall shipping cost a little, and make that more affordable. So there was just all this timing that goes into it.
Well, all right. I think I'm going to go on to the next question. This is still from at Cassiano CE. What is one thing that you want the readers to notice in your manga? Something that you worked really hard on and no one notices?
I think that's a good question, actually. So I know that a majority of the sound effects that we do are hand-drawn. And most, I would say, of our series out now are all, the sound effects are all redrawn with the, English sound effect as opposed to subtitling it or something like that. And
Yeah.
I read what is it, like if the lettering and the sound effects are bad, it's noticeable. If not, like it is what it is kind of thing. And I mean, no, like I most people may not, or some people may not pay attention to that. However, our letters, retouchers, everyone works really hard on it. And I think I love seeing the comments on Twitter and stuff like that of people praising it, not just for our series, just the lettering or the sound effects in general, because I think it's something, a lot of work goes into it, and I think at times it is overlooked or, not credited properly.
Yeah, I actually had, with both publishers reading your books, I had distinct moments where I, noticed, oh, that sound effect looks really nice. So I think good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I try to make it a point to always credit the whole team whenever I do a review or a recommendation video. Or
You
whatever
do,
it
yes.
may
Thank you.
be.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And it is because I am one of those people who is of the same mindset of if something's done badly, you notice it. But when something's done really well, a lot of people take that for granted and don't really even, they don't really have any perception of it. Their brain recognizes that it's really good, but they in their mind aren't aware that it's
it just
different
creates such a smooth reading experience that you don't.
Exactly. And even compared to, I've said it before, but even compared to some of the larger publishers, having redone hand-lettered stuff, sound effects, is fantastic. You can always tell. I personally prefer when sound effects are, redrawn, just because I do think it gives a better emphasis and understanding, and it's a skill in itself, of course. But compared to, some of the other larger publishers, who we shall not name, who do just prefer to subtitle it, and maybe not even subtitle it with an actual word, but just the Japanese onomatopoeia. You're like,
Start with that one. That drives me completely insane. So yeah.
So it really is a testament to how much love and care you do put into your releases, and I think it's something that does need to be celebrated, because it can be, especially now that the market, we have so much manga available. We have so much coming out all of the time that you can't really afford to be slacking on certain things. And I understand certain publishers have house styles and things like that. I understand how publishing works, but it does make the difference. And you wouldn't have seen that kind of lettering back when the manga industry was new in the US, because it had to be impressive. Now, again, people just take those sorts of things for granted. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No. It's a good soapbox to be on.
I mean, I guess I didn't actually answer, but if I was going to answer, I would say the same thing as Matt here. So, I mean, I'll just add my voice in a chorus to his, that for our titles as well, and for all the Starfruit titles that I've read as well, it's clear that the letters are very skilled and they do really good work, and I'm always very proud of the quality of lettering that's put out.
Next question is from @guiltyof_being, and it's addressed only to Glacier Bay, but I'm going to address it to both of you. It says, how do you go about selecting what you publish?
Well, I know how I go about selecting how I publish, so I'm really interested in what Matt has to say.
It varies, really. I mean, I like to look for things. I'm online 24/7, and I'm always looking at all kinds of manga. Twitter, of course. Pixiv, all kinds of different sites. I get a lot of recommendations from people. I have a recommendation thing on the Starfruit website. Please recommend some manga. I am actively looking at those and actually exploring one in particular that got recommended. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I love input from others. I don't know a lot of the smaller or indie artists. I'm not as familiar as, say, like Glacier Bay because, they are really good at that. So I'm still getting into that. However, yeah, definitely just browsing all the time or getting recommendations from friends, staff, or anyone really.
Yeah, for us as well, I mean, I'm looking at a lot of stuff online. A lot of indie artists publish stuff, or maybe self-publish or post stuff is really what I was trying to say. Post stuff on, lots of different sites, but you post excerpts on Twitter. Sometimes they post works on Note. A lot. There's so many different sites now with where people are posting stuff. There's like small magazines that sometimes will you can look at for different ideas of what's being done. There are like small bookshops that'll feature different artists. So basically, it's like and there's a lot of access to this stuff online. So really, just looking online is, I guess, what I would summarize it to, as well as like looking at old works. So, for example, there's a work that I haven't announced, and I think I only posted one small teaser picture a while back, which is for a collection of short stories from this one author who I think a couple years ago I bought one of their doujinshi online and read it a couple years ago, and I was like, wow, that was great. I'd love to do something by them. And earlier this year, I was going through stuff and I saw that and I was like, oh, let me do a little digging, and I found the author and talked to them, and now we're gonna put out a collection of their works, which is really exciting. And so it's, there's just like finding stuff online, digging through old works, recommendations, sometimes from staff, or friends, colleagues, other publishers, other artists. Occasionally I do get a couple recommendations. Like, I don't have a recommendation portal or page or anything on the site, but occasionally I'll get, emails or messages with ideas about, which is appreciated. So often I'll try and look at those. Sometimes they are maybe not suitable is not the word, but maybe not necessarily feasible, or it doesn't necessarily make sense for us to do, I know Matt gets Ippo requests a lot.
Wow. But, that's not small press at all.
But yeah, but every now and then we get some good, interesting recommendations that I'm currently working on. From question one, some of these things, like, you start working on them and like, hopefully in a matter of weeks or months, whether that seed you planted is going to sprout. But yeah, a lot of looking online, a lot of digging, a lot of following people. Like, the more people that you follow that post or share interesting work, like, they'll post something and then you can look at that person, and often they'll share interesting work as well. It's kind of just a network effect.
Definitely like an interesting network of more underground artists once you get into, I guess, Japanese indie mangaka Twitter. They always share each other, repost each other. Cool. Next question is from Zach at Uchu Shelf. Obviously a big fan of Glacier Bay, I know, because he very much enjoyed Children of Mutown, and actually interviewed the creator on his channel. But he asks, what led both of you to start indie publishers?
I mean, I've been a manga fan for a long time, anime and manga really, and I just want to see more manga in English that's accessible. Good quality stuff coming over that maybe would not be touched by your traditional publisher. So I took my chances, and yeah, it all worked out. So
Want to be the change in the world.
I guess so. I mean, like, it really, I mean, I think I've said it before in a couple other interviews and stuff. Like, Minami Kyuta is really the first one who, I just messaged her. I was like, hey, I mean, I've been a big fan of you for years. I've never read anything of yours because most of her stuff was published only in Japanese, a few in French, and I think one or two things in Spanish. And I said, I know of you. I've seen your stuff. Have you ever considered, seeing your stuff in English? And the rest is history. So,
Yeah, really excited for more Kyuta works.
Oh, me too. I can't wait. There are a handful lined up. I just don't. That's the thing, is I got to figure out how I want to do it. So there will be more info. I guess I can say it now. Early next year, I'm going to do something with that, because there are multiple Kyuta titles that in regards to that. So I don't know. I'm not very partial on how I want them published, so I might leave it up to the readers and do a poll or something to see what. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't know yet. It's she liked the idea, so we might roll with that.
Very cool. Very excited, honestly. No matter how you put it out, I will be purchasing.
Okay. I did leave out. I'll add on that. So there will be more Kyuta coming in the coming years. I can even say years, and print and digital. Heavy emphasis on print. So definitely.
That's awesome.
Very cool. All right. And Emma?
Yeah. So what led me to start an indie publisher? I mean, a lot of what I would say honestly is very similar to what Matt said. I read, I've read stuff for a long time, and manga, indie comics, just all kinds of stuff, books. But I kind of, it was kind of frustrating that there was just this dearth of interesting stuff being, from my perspective, interesting stuff being published in English. There's a lot of stuff that was being passed over, and I didn't, I guess when I first started, I didn't honestly think it was necessarily going to be a feasible thing. I guess I was still thinking, I'll do indie publishing, but I didn't think I'd put out very many books.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. I mean, I made Glacier 1, and I, a good part of me was I'll be selling these books for the next 5 years or something. I don't know. But there's been, it's heartening to see there's there is the audience that you would hope for this kind of stuff, and it's growing, and so I just I wanted to see a lot of stuff that I thought was interesting, and was not being picked up by anyone else, any other publishers, both small press and larger, works from not necessarily smaller publishers that just wasn't being brought over. So be the change.
Yeah.
That's
I definitely remember following you on, oh gosh, I don't even know when I first followed you on Twitter years ago. Before I started seeing, stuff for Glacier Bay and stuff even, I just always loved seeing you retweeting so much interesting art and stuff, and I ended up following a bunch of creators through just you retweeting stuff, I remember.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Good taste. Good taste.
Cool, thank you. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, certainly, like, I don't make videos frequently anymore, but, like, when I did, I would always get comments from people who were so, I guess, like, hungry for something different in English. Like, you always hear about this, like, incredible underground scene in Japan and, like, you know, the doujin scene, which overlaps a little bit. And, you know, I think people run into interesting stuff on, like, Twitter or Pixiv, but they don't speak Japanese, so they don't know how to pursue more of it. And you just end up very curious and very interested, but obviously that stuff doesn't get picked up by, like, you know, Viz or, I don't know, Kodansha or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
So I definitely think, like, you're filling a hole that a lot of people were noticing. Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, also from Uchu Shell, Zach, is, what is your licensing holy grail?
I don't really know. I have a couple, but there's one. Okay, there's one, but I won't speak it into existence because I do not want to, like, I don't want to jinx it. So I'm not even going to say it. But, shit, I don't really know. I don't have, like, one set thing. Definitely, like, I think I've said before, definitely, like, classic, some more classic shoujo, definitely.
Yes.
I'm really wanting to pursue some of that. I want a lot lot So I'm gonna look into it.
I'll buy every single one.
Yeah,
I'll buy 5 copies.
I'm all
and
for it.
distribute them amongst my friends.
Hey, like, no, like, I keep getting emails, and, like, a lot of them, you know, requests are not feasible, definitely. But then there are some, like, just a lot of shoujo authors I'm getting stuff for, and I mean, I'm pretty well versed in that sense, but I'm very excited. So that I guess you could say would be my holy grail.
That was awesome. Yeah, make it happen now.
Right? I guess.
That's such a tough question. I'm not sure if I have a specifics. I mean, I guess there's, like, a couple of authors that I'd really like to do work from. I guess I can speak a little generally. There's an author that I wanted to do work from for Glacier 1, and I wasn't able to get it, and for Glacier 2, and I wasn't able to get it, and for Glacier 3, and I wasn't able to get it. And so I'm really working hard, maybe too hard. Maybe I've gotten to the point of burning that contact just from trying so hard. But there's an author whose work I really like, and I would really like to see in English, but maybe, and hopefully that will happen, but, you know, maybe I won't be too explicit about, like, what that work is or who, but they're in this case, it's actually kind of like someone who does very kind of contemporary indie stuff, but not necessarily, you know, their stuff is actually being published by not necessarily a small publisher, so it's there's some additional complexities maybe. Otherwise, I just thought of this, and hopefully it's I would say work from Pampania, but their stuff's actually being published now, which is amazing. So, you know, that's awesome. So I can't wait to see more of that from Denpa. But, you know, I feel like it's okay to say that because they're already being published. So, you know, I can't jinx that. It's already happening.
Next question is from at Koi Boy B Boy. I love your username, Aiden. For Glacier Bay, specifically, manga releases from Glacier Bay have used a variety of printing and binding methods. How do you decide on which to use on a book? And could you speak to the strengths these alternate methods bring to the books?
Well, I think the thing to, let me give kind of a general answer about this. The thing to keep in mind is like, there are a lot of different, I don't mean this in a pedantic way, and I'm sure a lot of people are already aware about this, but I'm just going to try and like speak from a very like position of like not assuming anything. But there's a lot of printing methods, and there are some that are like very popular because it fits kind of the existing industrial production for books. So when you they're cheap, they meet the effectiveness necessary. So like when you think about like a typical kind of release, it's typically something that's like what's called perfect bound soft cover. And so when you think of like manga titles, usually it'll be something like that in a standard format, and it'll have like a glossy or a matte kind of cover, or sometimes something alternate of that. I use we because Glacier Bay is more than me, but in a sense, I run Glacier Bay, so I is also works here. My perspective, like going back to when I started doing this, I follow a lot of like indie comics in Japan, but also in the US and elsewhere. And you tend to see a variety of, you tend to see a lot of the same kind of stuff, like standardized kind of printing fit for like small scale stuff, but you also see some variety. Like one of the more commonly seen one is like risograph printing, and so these tend to use like sometimes different kind of paper types that are a little nicer than more commercialized printing production, and obviously the risograph printing itself is different. So without getting into the details, basically what I'm trying to say is there's like a whole world of different kind of printing techniques, and my motivation was, having seen some of these things, I was really interested in exploring different possibilities for print production, and so this perspective is changing a little now that I'm like doing more publishing now, and it's more of a thing. But when I did Glaolia 1 and when I did the first couple print books, I was really thinking like, I'm making this book and it might never exist again. So if I'm going to make this book and I'm not going to really make any money from it, and the authors, I'm paying the authors, but they're not making that much, no one's really making real money, air quotes on that, everyone's getting paid, but it's not real money, like that they could like, this could be their job, really, their full-time or anything. And so I really wanted like everyone to have something that they could feel like really proud of, like a book that was like really special, is kind of the way I felt about it, is like, I'm gonna put a lot of work into this book, and I want it to be kind of like a really cool thing. And so that was my, maybe like part of the motivation, is the self-centric motivation of like, well, I really want to explore all these different printing methods and binding methods. Having said that, maybe let me, without going on too much longer, because I'm really going on, let's just talk about some of the strengths. With Glaolia, we use like, it's kind of a conventional perfect binding so far, but we use like a soft touch cover laminate, which obviously has this really nice textured kind of soft feeling. It's kind of a really nice touch, and it also has the effect of that cover lamination is kind of helps to protect the book a little. And for so those are reso printed, so there's another layer, because reso printing uses ink that doesn't necessarily always like completely adhere to the uncoated paper under it, and so the other benefit of the attaching that lamination is it helps to seal the ink onto the covers. which is nice because then you don't have to worry about smudging on the covers or anything like that. I would say it's if you're trying, you could smudge the interiors, and I've received a message from a couple people where maybe they had a little ink smudge on their hand. I'm not trying to discount that it's possible, but having handled almost 1,000 copies from shipping them, I shipped out everyone's copies basically, and I have my own copies, and all I'll say is that personally I have not experienced any smudging. Riso, since I mentioned it has a bunch of different qualities, and generally I would say you notice a lot with it has noticeably usually really nice paper, and then it also has this very noticeable print because of how it uses the halftone pattern on the machine, and then it has pre-mixed colors. So if you're using different colors, you can get really strong color effects that really stand out. So maybe if I remember, I'll take pictures of some of my books that are like that and post them on Twitter afterwards. But otherwise, Mutown probably stands out a lot. That one uses an Oda binding, which basically means that the simplest way to think about it is it's a sewn binding. So it's like a paperback, and the signatures for the book, basically all the folded pages, are sewn together, but the spine is not actually attached to the cover, and instead it's glued from the first and last, basically the first and last page, the first and last signature are glued onto the cover using basically a cold mix glue. And so this is actually much sturdier than just conventional gluing methods for perfect binding. But the real benefit is it lets you open the book completely lay flat basically. So it gives you a really good reading experience. And for those, I know this is I know this is a big thing amongst manga readers and manga collectors. It does not crease the spine in any way, because the spine isn't. It doesn't crease the cover's spine, because the cover is not attached to the book spine. So you don't have to worry about that when you're reading. But yeah, basically we're always exploring. I like to experiment with different printing methods. Using spot gloss treatment. I think we did foil on Fall Stars. I guess that's printing but not binding. But it's it takes more money. It takes more time usually for these things. But if you can find a way to, my philosophy is, if I can find a way to make it work, I want to do something creative with the books, and hopefully it adds something in terms of the experience. When you get the book, when you read the book, it makes it kind of stand out a little bit. It's the personal touch. Okay, I probably talked way too much.
No.
Sorry.
That was a great
Awesome
answer.
I'm so this is a question from me, sort of to follow up on that, kind of, maybe not. And feel free to answer this in any capacity, or not answer if you don't want. But prior to starting Glacier Bay or Starfruit Books, had you been involved in publishing before, or is this really your first foray into book publishing, either digitally or actual print releases?
For me, this would be my first venture into publishing.
Yeah, for me, this is actually my first venture as well. I guess I'll make a comment. This is more of a personal comment, which is that our first book we put out was was Sleepy Child, right, in November 2019. Oh my gosh. Wow, so long ago, but also not really that long ago.
In the before times.
The before times, yeah. Before and after. Or before and during, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess I don't want to tangentialize. I with every book I publish, I can see many things that I want to go back and fix, but at some point you have to step away from that. Having said that, there isn't really any, it's not like I'm really embarrassed, or there isn't anything really that I'm not happy with A Sleepy Child. I think it turned out great. I'm pretty happy with it, but there's maybe it's not visible on a book output side, but from my side, having worked with the files and stuff, I can see the change that the I guess year and a half or whatever of experience, because I do like a lot. I do like the design for all our titles right now, and I do the layout and editing, and there's a lot of I guess for Glaolia 2 and maybe Glaolia 1, there was I just want to give credit, the layout was collaboratively done with me and Tim Sun. I don't think we credited layout explicitly in the back, but we both worked on that together. And of course, Tim Sun is the letterer for that title and did an amazing job. But anyhow, I guess I'm rambling. But what I wanted to say was, this is my first publishing experience, and so I spent a lot of time trying to figure everything out and get better. But I can see. Hopefully, it's not too visible from the other end of it, but from my side, I can see the huge change in processes on my end as I figured out how to do things better and more efficiently between that first title and the ones we're putting out now.
Yeah.
So,
that's any.
It's a learning experience.
Definitely is, yeah.
I asked the question because although I'm not in the publishing industry, I did study publishing and editing, so it's something, the specifics of how books are made, as you were talking about the different book binding and the costs that go into that, is something that I do notice. I know that a lot of people tend to not, because that's not something that they're aware of. But at least for me, it is something that is always appreciated. And I find it really interesting because when you talk about publishing, there is such a focus on, what was the big five, now the big four of the major publishers. But even, I live in Australia, and so we have a lot of, we have smaller imprints of those larger publishers, but we have a lot of self-published and indie books, just general books as well here. And I don't think people actually know how many books come out of publishers or come out of individuals that aren't connected to some of these larger corporations. And it's really interesting. I'm always interested in the nitty-gritty sides of publishing. I was just a little bit curious in regards to whether it was just a completely new venture, or just something you had some kind of idea of before. And I think it's a testament as well that really anyone can get into the industry if you're willing to put the work in.
Yeah, there's it was just basically new, just spending a lot of time drilling down and learning everything. You you either have to, if you're a small publisher, you either have to learn how to do it yourself or be able to pay someone else to do
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, there's a bunch of stuff I'm still learning now. I'm trying to do a lot of research into figuring out. I'm still learning about everything I'm doing, but I'm now trying to figure out how to coordinate with stores better, or like researching whether distribution is even feasible, kind of thing. There's a lot to learn, but it's doable, and we're probably going to see more people working on it, I'm guessing.
Y'all might have inspired some folks, The mention of distribution is an excellent segue into a couple of questions we got from @BasketOfEgg. Yeah. Are you aiming for a distribution deal at some point, or is that not in the cards right now?
For Starfruit, not at this moment. Maybe give us a little while longer. But definitely reaching out to, smaller comic shops throughout the States. We've got some pretty good feedback from a few of them, as well as overseas. I'm trying to get more contact overseas, specifically UK and Europe. So anyone listening, if you have any contact over there, or please let us know from your favorite comic shop, or let them know about us. Same as Australia. I would love to get some stuff over there for sure, because those shipping prices are not desirable. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. So it's like it's just ridiculous. Like it pains me, but I know I've been talking with a shop in the Philippines, and it looks like they want to carry some of our titles. So that's gonna be really cool. But yeah, so nothing on the larger distro side, like Diamond or anything like that. Mainly just selling directly through our site, and hopefully some smaller comic shops and bookstores throughout the States and as well as overseas.
Yeah. The short answer is basically the same. Right now we've been, for the last little while, I've been working on setting up our own distribution with individual stores, but there's really, at this point, it's hard to see it being too feasible, right now to do a broader distribution deal. So right now I'm really focusing on, selling directly, through our website, and hooking up with, individual stores. I think there's a small network that I, can send books to in the U.S. and a couple international shops. It just becomes really difficult. Everyone knows the elephant in the room, so to speak, being international shipping. And so it's really tough for individuals. It's really tough for, for international stores to order our titles, because it, for the larger stores, it becomes, they might, not really be making enough for it to, on the sale, for it to be worthwhile. And the way to ameliorate that is basically to either sell it through smaller shops that their margin isn't necessarily impacted in the same way, or to sell a lot of books, but then it becomes a different problem. At that point you might be able to drive down the shipping, but then you have a higher risk factor for the stores, plus due to COVID, of course, existing shops that survived aren't really necessarily looking to place a big order on an unknown. So it's just so many different factors to tackle with international. So working on that, hopefully something will happen, but at this point, there's working with a larger distributor like Diamond or something like that is just not really looking at that at this point, because that runs into the reverse problem of not being feasible necessarily for us. So I guess maybe I'll spend 1 second and just for readers that are listeners that are interested in what, but don't necessarily know what distribution deal means, or selling to shops, how that factors, the price that we sell books at on our website, the list price or whatever. If let's say you purchase the Glacier Bay Books title from our website, then we basically, I get that money minus, the cost of shipping to you, minus the transaction fee. So basically that money goes to me, and then I take that money and I send a certain amount as royalties, etc. But basically a big chunk ends up recouping back to me to help pay for that book, and to the author to help pay them for that book. If we sell the book to a store and then you buy the book at the store, you're conceivably paying basically the same price at the store. The store buys the books from us at a discount, like basically maybe call it a wholesale discount. So they're, let's just say, for example, they're paying, they're getting a 40 or 50% discount on the book, just for example. I think if you Google wholesale, that's probably something like that's what you'll find. In that case, they'll, modulo fees or something, they've gotten the book at 40 or 50% off, and then they'll sell it full price. Their cut is that of profit is that 40 or 50%, which hopefully pays for the book. And then our cut is that 50 or 60% that we sold it to them for, which hopefully will pay, help pay for the book and the author, help pay the author for the book. If you are selling through a distributor, without getting into the details, basically what that means in short is like the distributor is going to help sell your book for you, and they're going to take over that, but they'll also take a cut. So maybe they'll sell the book to stores for you, and they have their own network and they have their contacts, so maybe they'll do a better job, place it at more stores, and they'll do more store sales, but then in return they'll take a cut. So now if you sold the book, we're selling the books to the stores for 40 or 50%, so you were getting 50 or 60%. Now from that, maybe the distributor will take 20 or 25% or 30%. The exact numbers are going to vary. But so for now, for example, your cut, maybe I was on each sale, I was making 50%, and maybe that's down to 30%. Yeah. And so I have to somehow take that 30% and pay for the book and pay the author and all those various, and pay the people who worked on it that they've already been paid, and so that factors in the book cost. Anyhow, so I meant that to be like a one sentence thing. The basic idea is distribution only works if you can make the numbers work, and it's for various reasons it's really hard to make those numbers work, right? Because if I had the money and print a ton of books, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'd all sell, and so it's hard. Yeah, you just have to. You have to find a way to make the numbers all work. So right now, I'm not really not sure that I'm seeing that in the cards. I'm always looking, because I know that would help get books to more people, and if the distributor has international networks, or if it's like a bulk wholesaler where they can, help combine it in order with a lot of things, and that might help with international, which is a priority for me, but. It's tough to make all those numbers work.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Very nice. The other question from @BasketOfEgg is, have you ever been offered a title by an author or publisher, or is it always you approaching them?
I would say I would say all of ours are ones that I've approached. However, after working with them one time, we're receiving, they're writing back, hey, will you do these series of hours as well? So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's always been, so far, generally myself reaching out to the publisher or the author directly to kind of make that connection. And then I've had a few now that we've worked with that are offering to work with us even more.
That's
so
great.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. On my end, let's see. Far and away, it's usually me approaching them. I have had a few cases where authors sent me works, but I think everything so far that we've published has been stuff that, I've been going to them, I think in the extreme, like if you look at the Sleepy Child stories from Saika, after Sleepy Child came out, I asked them if they'd be interested in drawing more, and so the next two stories, I don't want to say that they wouldn't have drawn them, if I hadn't asked. I don't know. They probably would have. But those kind of came out of, having done this first book. I was kind of trying to ask if they would want to do more stories and if there was anything they wanted to draw. So, and thankfully they did. And we've been blessed with many wonderful new stories and hopefully many more. But yeah, usually it's been me approaching authors or publishers. There are a couple instances otherwise, but not to the. I don't think it doesn't sound to the same degree as with Matt. So yeah, it's very very unusual, I would say, for me to get requests or offers from authors or publishers.
Next is a question from @DreMoraDre. A couple of these questions have already been asked, so I am going to skip those, but they do have one that's what are some milestones you hope to achieve in the near future?
Definitely for me personally, would be to get more titles in print. I think I've said before, we have our first print title, actually, When Pink Rain Falls. Should be coming out. It did get a little delayed, unfortunately, due to printing, COVID and stuff like that. However, it is featured in Yaoi Crate, so they're getting, we're making sure to fulfill those orders first before we do open them to everyone else. Another fun fact about that title is the person who did the layout and all that great stuff and got the pre-press ready was Emuh here from Glacier Bay. So the quality is more perfect than it should be, because there is an extra layer of perfect on there. So there's no worries there. I was like, what, this is going to be great. I mean, it's going to be really awesome. So that is going to be coming out. Definitely, I have a super secret project that's going to be like my legacy that I'm going to work on here. This project, it's going to be a really good project, but I can't. And it'll be announced, I hope, by the end of the year. That is like a big milestone for me. One milestone that I just hit actually was getting a license lined up with Hideshi Hino, horror master. Hideshi Hino. We're doing The City of Pigs, which will be out in November. Pre-orders are up now, or open rather. So yeah, I definitely hit that milestone. That was a big one for me. It was that was my big thing so far. But definitely, it's made me want to set the bar even higher. So I do have some other things definitely that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that was a super exciting license there. I was so surprised. Wow.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I'm really excited for it. There's a lot of great work going into it. And his team over there are excited for it as well. That it's actually being brought to the light again in a sense. It will not be our last time working with Hino on something Hino related. However, that's as much as I can say about that.
Ooh, exciting.
I'd like to give a little more info, but I can't, because then it spirals into something else, and I can't spiral.
Milestones. Most of the publications that we've done at Glacier Bay have been either, let me rephrase, the standalone titles that we've done, not like Glaolia anthologies with lots of different artists. All of the standalone titles so far have been works through that we've worked with individual artists on, I think there's a couple things that I'm working on that hopefully will come through, where we'll actually be getting a title from a publisher, which is kind of an odd thing to Milestone, but it is like kind of exciting. And so that's that's something I'm kind of looking forward to, is because like it represents maybe a kind of a new stage of growth, if you will. And I think the big milestone in the near future for me is trying to achieve kind of a level of self-sustainment, I think, for Glacier Bay. So right now I'm kind of working on it in a more of like a full-time capacity, and that's really recent. That's really new, and it's a bit of an experiment, but I'm hoping that because my my baseline costs are relatively low for various reasons, and I'm hoping if I like tighten my belt a little, then I might be able to work on this and bring out more books, and kind of focus on publishing some more books, and just kind of maintain our current status. So that's kind of a not very glamorous, but I'm hoping to basically make it kind of near future self-sustaining, as a milestone, as opposed to me like as of last year I would, or as of until recently, I would be putting my money into Glacier Bay effectively, and it wasn't that it didn't pay off, or so to speak, but I'm hoping that I can use the revenue from Glacier Bay to basically just use Glacier Bay's current funds to fund the future books, as opposed to relying on me to get external funding on this.
Yeah, but that's like a super.
So I think that's the
important and.
That's our my exciting milestone. Otherwise, I mean, just like there's a bunch of exciting authors and exciting works that I'm looking forward to putting out, and I just can't wait to get those out. We are working on a series. It's a self-published series, but what was the name? Final Testament to the Moon, by Saka Mogi. And so that's like an extension of her series with Kodansha, that ended up finishing a little while ago, and so she's kind of writing. Maybe you could say the 3-volume series with Kodansha is like the story of these two characters, and one of them is like a werewolf. Maybe I'll just say like that, and then this longer series, so far 4 volumes, but I think I just saw on Twitter yesterday that she finished the draft for volume 5, and so it's kind of telling the story like of what the book calls the Beastkin, and then the story of the werewolves as a whole history in the world, kind of, and so they're kind of intertwined, but it's a standalone work, and it's something very new, because aside from Glaolia, which is in a sense a series, but really is just a bunch of individual anthologies that we put out, this is like the first time we've ever worked on a series of connected volumes, and then having the background being that it's like drawn from this existing work that's been published. It has a lot of complexity. Yeah, like there's all the names have been set, for instance. So,
all right. So I was actually going to try to save this for the last question, but I actually have the very lucky opportunity to go get my second vaccination here in a few minutes. Obviously, the timeline that I have to go get that is very strict, so I will be popping out, unfortunately. But before that, I do want to answer one question from @StoriedShelves, who always leaves such insightful, wonderful questions for us to answer, and we appreciate them very much. But this is for all of us. They also have some questions for just the guests, but I'll save that for after. So for all of us, what have been your favorite small press reads, and are there any creators you'd like to read more from? Yeah.
Would you like to go first, Ray? Considering you're on...
I'm on a time
the
crunch.
time limit.
Yeah. Well, obviously I'm the least experienced in this, of this group, but of the ones that I read for this podcast, like I said, I think Ripples was actually the one that left the biggest impression on me. I think in terms of story, it's a fairly standard, I would say, exploration of grief over death, loss of a loved one, perhaps. I like that it's more in a sort of metaphorical space, so that you can really consider it to be about any emotional experience of loss or grief or death. But what struck me was the visual style. It's done with... The figures in it are very, very simple and almost sketched out, but all of the... everything else, the backgrounds and everything, is done. Is that watercolor? I don't know if you...
Yeah, so... Yeah. It's like a ink wash.
Ink wash, that makes sense. Really beautiful. Specifically the way that light is used in that one is really very interesting, and it's used in a lot of different ways. So I just loved, like, sitting and reading and, like, staring at each individual panel. So I had a lot of fun with that one. And I also really enjoyed Mutown. I thought that was a very interesting read. I liked that it... I feel like I've been to towns like that in Japan, so it kind of, like, hit on my own experiences a little bit. Not so much like my own... I don't have a hometown. I was a military brat, so... But, it hit on, like, things that I've seen in terms of, like, social, infrastructural issues within Japan, so I found it very interesting. And for the question of creators I'd like to read more from, I'm definitely interested in more from, that creator. From Starfruit, I actually really enjoyed, what is it, The Town You Live In, with the single color per chapter. That one, it's very whimsical, and it kind of reminded me of an illustrator that I really like, Komatsu Shinya,
Okay.
who's featured in AX Alternative Manga, but I have, like, all the tankobon releases that they have, but I really, yeah, again, it was like the art style is very fun to look at.
I agree with you on that. I also feel the art and the stories kind of complement each other in the sense of, like, especially, and there are only 3 stories. However, they do cover a wide variety of topics. So, like The Town You Live In, it was, interestingly enough, it's funny you said that, because I was just talking about it to my mom the other day. She doesn't. I mean, she knows I'm obsessed with manga and I publish, but she doesn't get more into it than that. But I recently moved back to my hometown. I kind of noticed things differently about my hometown than I did when I grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of nice, like, to revisit that story and kind of, just kind of appreciate it more in a sense.
I definitely, like, got that sense of nostalgia as well, and, like, just finding those weird little corners of your town that, are... just fill your day with a little bit of wonder, a little bit of curiosity. That was a fun one for me. I also enjoyed Pop Life a lot as well. Yeah, that one is, I like seeing this trend of, like, slice of life manga, as well as, like, specifically parenting slice of life manga, but, looking at a more unconventional or more untraditional type of family.
Yeah, I think it was, I think Pop Life, I really wanted to start with Pop Life as our first, like, debut series, because I thought it was so much different than, it was definitely a different pace than what it was, than some other books that are coming out. So I really enjoyed that. And I love slice of life. Any sort of slice of life series or comment or anything. So sign me up for any of that. I was really happy for that, definitely.
Oh, I also, sorry, wanted to just mention Rabbit Game as well, was another one that I read from Glacier Bay. Again, big fan of, like, weird, surreal stuff. I think I'm definitely going to have to read that one again to get the gist of, like, what's going on and what it's saying, but it has a very Paprika vibe to it. So if you're, like, a Kon Satoshi kind of person, definitely check out this short story. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that was one that we, that was one that when we were putting it out, I was just thinking, like, a bunch of our stuff is a little unconventional. I mean, and that one is too, but I could see that one having a lot of appeal.
Yeah.
It's
I feel
all
like...
the... Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all those notes.
delicious weirdness. I actually am gonna dip out here to go get vaccinated. But thank you so much. I had so much fun listening to this, and this last little bit I will also look forward to listening to in the final episode, so thank you.
Nice. Yeah. No, thank you so much. It's been really great.
I think I will continue on from where Ray stopped. I am more, I guess, I have read a lot more indie and small press stuff than Ray has. Namely because I don't know, I'm into weird stuff, and I'm into a lot of very wide variety of genre and topic, and I think we can all agree that there is a severe lack of certain genres, of certain just types of manga that isn't being released by major publishers. Obviously because they don't really see the value of it, or they just don't think that it'll be valuable to the scale that they release things, which is understandable, but it does mean that we miss out on a lot. And so I am always really grateful when there is an opportunity to support smaller indie publishers, small press publishers. I have read, I think almost all, if not all, almost all of the titles that both Starfruit and Glacier Bay have released. I bought That Child and Glaiolia 1 at the same time, and I think that was my first purchase from Glacier Bay. I don't, again, in the before times, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And I do really love the Glaiolia anthologies. I'm so excited for Volume 3. I never like to presume that things will continue, but when I heard the news that there was going to be more, I was thrilled, to say the least. And so many really interesting, like such a wonderful mix of creatives and mangaka in those. I'm always... I have high expectations all the time when I go into anthologies, and sometimes when you do have a mix of like short story collections, there can be stuff that's like really, really good and then stuff that's just not good, and I've never had that experience. It's just always been a really consistently high enjoyment. Like every single one of them is really good. I've never been disappointed by any of the stories included in Glacier 1 or 2, and hopefully 3. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
No, I have trust.
Wow.
I have trust. But even outside of Glacier, Children of Mutown, I think, has been discussed a lot. Well, at least in the circles that I've been in, and it's a really, like, I really, really enjoyed that. I think it has almost a Taya Matsumoto vibe to it, which really, I don't know, the themes that, and the premise that particular book builds off of, really appealed to me. And like, again, I kind of knew that I would be buying it anyway, but when I had it in my hands, it was so interesting. I just love a story that can be told on multiple levels, and that's sort of the experience that I got from that particular book. And Dear Sarah as well, I just that's a really beautiful little book, a little bit different from a more typical like manga release, but just beautifully poignant. And considering it is such a short book, it's about 40 pages, is so incredibly effective. And I think the way that it plays around with, I guess, a much grander idea, and isn't, you know, plays around with this idea of grief and time travel and fixing or taking opportunities that you missed in the past, or building connections that you wouldn't have had before, or wouldn't. It was really good. And I'm really looking forward to Ohoton's next. I know you have at least one of their titles coming. So I was thrilled when I heard that. As on Starfruit Books side, Pulp Life was, I think, the first that I read from Starfruit Books, and I fell in love with Minami Kyuta with that book, or books. I adored that series, for all of the reasons that Ray said, but it just, especially presenting this version of family that's a little bit outside of the norm or outside of the expected, but is just so, I think, relatable in a sense. I'm not good at explaining quite why I like things, but right. There was some, like, the whole chapter about the cat, like, at the end of its life and then passing away. I empathized so much with that, and it was very, very much like a similar experience that I had with our dog. So it was like, I recognized that, and it was just such a genuine human feeling. And I think throughout that whole series is just very genuine experiences that people have, maybe not in that exact, like, family structure, or living arrangement, but it highlights that importance of human connection and how we build communities and things like that. I just thought it was so good. It was so good. And
No, I agree with you on that 100% in the sense of her art is very realistic. Her background drawing.
Yes.
I loved her landscape drawing. I love the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Her trees look great. So it's like I always say, look at the trees for sure. And like you said with the cat chapter, actually when releasing Pop Life, I actually had this. I couldn't read that chapter. It was a little too much for me. We had just lost the family cat, and it was like kind of similar to that. And I was like, no, I can't read that. So after when reading it before putting it out, like I said sorry, like someone else is gonna have to give this an extra read or something because I can't read that chapter.
Yeah.
So I actually just read it recently, so I was actually able to. And you're right, it's very very emotional in the sense of it is human emotion. It's very raw. The emotion's very raw. I mean, it's something not just that story, like you said. Throughout every story, the feelings of love, of family. Family's not always husband wife. It's not always a married couple, as we see in the in the story here. It's two friends raising kids together. I mean, I think it's great. It's definitely a unique title, definitely a different kind of title, I guess you could say. Something that isn't traditional. I mean, I would never in a million years expect any publisher in the West to pick this up.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely on that.
And so obviously I'm really looking forward to more of her stuff, which you have alluded to. I also really enjoyed Look Into My Eyes, another shorter one, but I think just really powerful in how the characters are able to, I don't know, present their message. I thought it was strong, very emotive art. Just, yeah, all around just very enjoyable. Something that when I read something, it's always to connect to characters more so than necessarily plot. I'm very character focused, and so when a character can be, or I don't know if empathetic is quite the right word, but when you can connect so strongly to characters, to situations, even without having experienced their particular situation, or even if you don't necessarily agree with them, you can understand the situation. And this is just generally, right? Talking about media, it's something that I really highly value. I think it takes a very talented writer, especially, but artists as well, to be able to convey those emotions and to make that connection. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan. Sorry, that's like a really lame way to end.
So with that one, Look Into My Eyes in particular, that was actually, I want to say that was Miyako Yoko's either first work or one of her first works. It was, it was a doujin self-published. She actually has one other series in English. It's published digitally on Futokiya. It is a boys' love series. It is very light from what it looked like, I think she said. And then she has a new series now running in, I think, a weekly magazine, but like not a traditional manga magazine. It's more like a tourism in a sense magazine, or like a local city magazine. I've got a couple chapters. Looks pretty good actually. But no, I agree with you on that in the sense of one, it's definitely a topic. We see idol groups are a lot bigger than they used to be, and especially in the West. And it's not something I'm very familiar with. But just to look at that perspective of like someone, like what's next after being an idol, I mean, it's interesting, and her emotions and battling with it, and it's not just a decision she's making. She has the rest of the the group and stuff like that. So it was interesting. It was definitely something, again, unique or not traditional. So I was really excited for that. Yeah.
So I think I will extend that question to our two wonderful guests, as to what have been your favorite small press reads. are there any creators that you'd like to read more from either your own catalogs or others?
Well, I guess I'll start. And, I mean, I like everything that gets put out from Starfruit. I am excited for this Hideshi Hino release coming. I'm excited for everything coming. I can say that. So yeah, definitely any titles that I put out, of course, I read and I really enjoy. I've read a couple things from Iridori. What was the one that I really liked? There was one, Mina-kun is asexual.
I love that.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I think I read like just the first part, and I really enjoyed that. I think the other title by them I read was "This Is Love." I think that was what it's called. I'd have to look. I'd have to look at it again. It's been a bit since I read that. I read I think the first or second part of that, and I enjoyed that. So those were some good reads. Also, of course, I mean, I buy and read everything that Glacier Bay puts out. I'm a little behind. I will say I'm behind on reading. However, I am a huge Glaiolia fan. I really am looking forward to Glaiolia 3 announcement. Whatever is going to be in it, I know will be very good. I know that I have a personal bar set very high for Glacier Bay on what's in Glaiolia, and it always is exceeded, so I'm not worried about that. I really do. I think it's a great selection. Like you said earlier about it, you know, with it, like one-shot collections or anthologies, sometimes you've got like some great ones and then nothing good, or just something that's not as good, but that's not Glaiolia. So, yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to. No, really, it really is. It's nice. It's refreshing. It's a different selection. Like my favorite. Okay, so example, Glaiolia 2. Whenever I was reading it, and then it says like, please flip the book for the one story. And I was like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
So it was like, I was like, oh, this is so great, because it just adds a touch to it. It's very, I don't know, it's very unique. It's very, I don't know, it's, I love everything about it. So I can't say enough about it. So yeah, definitely check out Glaiolia if you have not.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, that's it on my end. But
I wanted to say, well, I mean, I want to say thank you again, and I also wanted to say thank you to G, because you review them on your channel every time you get them, and it was wonderful. I remember the review of Glaiolia 2 was so amazing. Like, I think I posted that, and I co-edit that with Zuzka, and I think they commented something along the lines of like, it's really, you know, it's just really nice to see like someone connecting like this with someone, because that's like that, you know, you that the way you both describe Glaiolia is like how how we like working on it, how I feel about it. So it's like, it's really awesome to see other people feel that way about it. It's not just a book, you know, it's like other people love it that way too. So
yeah, and I like, obviously I am in a position where I do get review copies from both of you, but I'm never one to heap praise on something because of like an obligation of a review, right? I do try. Well, I hold myself to a standard that I will always be honest about how I feel about something. Yeah. I'm not too like, I don't know, scared to have a unpopular opinion, as many people may know. But legitimately, the amount of enjoyment, amount of love that I can tell goes into all of the books that I do receive from you. And the fact that even if I wasn't getting review copies of things, I would be buying them. I would be buying them regardless of the crazy US to Australian shipping, regardless of whatever, because I do legitimately think that it is a incredible product. Like, it's incredible stories being delivered and shared by incredible publishers. And it's something that, in my small part, as like having the YouTube platform, being able to share that, the joy, the experience of reading them, and the enjoyment of being able to experience these stories is like it's kind of a no-brainer for me. Like, of course I'm going to talk passionately about the stuff that I love, and that's, you know, if I can help out in that small way, then absolutely. And even if it isn't helping out necessarily, I will do it anyway, because it is something that I love. So it's never feel like it's a obligated thing on my end, because it never has been and it never will be.
Yeah, I think Matt can agree with me that, like, when you're in the small press, it's just like hard to find like people like reading your works in general. So it's just like amazing to like just see that, oh, someone out there like read the book we made, and it's just like so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's, you know, you see someone say like, oh, just purchased, or, you know, or just retweet it and say, oh, this was great, or even just a comment about it. I mean, it really does mean a lot. I mean, it's great to see that, because I mean, we're out here, you know, I guess on a larger scale with large publishers that are, you know, have tons of volumes in print and, you know, much better marketing and distribution and things like that. So I mean, literally every, you know, that every like, retweet, all of that, it really does help. And especially, like, you know, seeing it on a YouTube video is great. You know, you are very passionate about everything you do review. And you do give I watch, you know, a lot of your reviews. It's nice to get someone who is passionate about it, also because you really get to hear someone else's perspective, but like the whole story, not just you know, something short. So that's always nice.
Well, thank you. That's lovely to hear. I'm glad.
I'm not on YouTube very often, but, you know, every once in a while.
Thank you for that.
Should I was going to say, should I say some of my favorite small press reads?
Yes,
I know we like drifted away from it. I don't think I said anything.
But it's fine.
Oh, no worries. I was like sitting over here like, can I think of something? Like, think harder. Well, so it's okay. Well, I mean, I guess, you know, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, but like, I love all of the books that we put out. You know, at Glacier Bay. You know, it's like I'm very passionate about all of our books. So, you know, we read them. You know, I read them, or sometimes we request them and then read them, and then it's just we love them, so we work on them. And yes, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, clearly I'm a fan of all of the books that I put out. The titles that that Starfruit's put out that, you know, really stand out to me personally is, of course, Pop Life, which has been talked about so much. You know, like, I don't know what original things I can say, but like, you know, I'm really drawn to that kind of really you know, just kind of intimate, quiet kind of story where you can kind of see, you know, the kind of real drama play out. You know, there's not necessarily like a melodrama, but just kind of like you get a real sense of, you know, reality and humanness coming, you know, flowing out of it. So, and I think that was the first time I'd ever read any of Kyuta's work, which was wild, like blew my mind. So I am really excited for more of her works that you're putting out, Matt, because that one was just wonderful.
Okay, I'm glad.
Yeah, the other, I mean, you've announced a bunch of things I'm excited for, but the other thing I remember that stood out recently was Drunks, especially the title story. I guess you can understand why I'd like that, because it has a lot of the similar vibe. Maybe not the reality sensibility, but like it has the same kind of maybe kind of intimate everyday feel of Pop Life in a way. But Just the kind of the vampire title story was just so much fun, and just like so the art especially was just so beautiful. I love that kind of like inky, like shadowy look, so those were real standouts for me. Ironically, the ones you mentioned from Iridori, I'm really interested in reading, but I'm really behind on reading right now, and I haven't got around to reading them yet, so I'll echo that I'm interested in reading them, but I haven't actually read them. Otherwise, I'm glancing at my bookshelf right now, because in times like this, I have like my brain freezes and I can't think of anything. But I guess I will mention some books that really stood out to me that are genuinely small press. They aren't actually manga, but I'll mention there's a book called Window Pane by Joe Kessler, which was published by Breakdown Press, which has published a bunch of Gekiga works, including Yuichi Yokoyama works. So lots of interesting manga stuff that they put out, which I'm a fan of. But I'm a fan of a lot of Breakdown Press's stuff. But in particular, this book, Window Pane, which collects like 4 or 6. Anyhow, I feel bad that I don't know. It collects several short stories that he's drawn, and they're so like they're just so like beautiful and like kind of like just like magical, like anything can happen. Just like there's like one that's just about a sailor who visits an island and not an island, a town, and just meets this lady there who's just living her normal life working there, and they meet and then leave when he leaves on the ship a couple days later, but you can kind of see their like relationship blossom in those few days. I know I'm not really describing well, but I really love his work, especially those later. Window Pane is like his most recent stories, kind of, is I think very strong. The other one, which is easier to get a hold of because it got republished, is there's work that's like a short, a 60-page story called Diana's Electric Tongue, which was republished in a collection called Girl Town. And I really, also not manga, but I really highly recommend both of these titles. There are a bunch of other really pretty good stories in Girl Town as well, but Electric Tongue is the standout for me. And I would say, like, if you like any of the books from Glacier Bay, or if you like any of the ones specifically that I mentioned from Starfruit, I think you'd probably really like both of those.
I will echo that Electric Tongue is really good. I have read it in the Girl Town.
Oh, awesome.
I don't own that one, but I did borrow it from my library, and nice. That is a very cool little story.
I'll have to see if my library has it.
Yeah, I think it's like Top Shelf or something put out the Girl Town collection, so they're big enough that there's a good chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to find it.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing with Story on Shelves' questions, and these are, of course, for our wonderful guests. We have, are there any trends you've noticed in manga publishing, translation and Japanese side?
So translation means like in translation, right? Not the act of translation.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, that's what I think. I guess maybe like, I'll make like a... I feel like I preface everything with I'll make a brief comment, but I'll make it genuinely brief because I don't know if I have that much I can say about it. Comment, which is that overall I think recently in translation, on the English side of things, and in other languages as well, just from gleaning what licenses are happening, I think we're seeing a lot of variety coming through, and maybe there's a bit of like a boom effect happening, which it's hard to know how much that will translate to as things continue to evolve, but I think we're seeing like a lot of a lot of, there's still a lot of the same kind of patterns of what gets licensed, but we're also seeing some like more surprising risks. Like sometimes, Yen Press is licensing, unusual things for them. We're seeing like Number 5, like older works from unconventional authors get re-released. So there's a bit more variety than I think maybe people would have expected looking at where things were going, I don't know, a year and a half or two ago. Denpa licensing Pampanya and a bunch of their other, honestly, a lot of their stuff, Kaiji, Maiden Railways, they have like a really big mix of kind of unconventional works. And I think on the Japan side, I can't speak too authoritatively, but my perspective, limited as it is that it seems like there's also kind of a bit of more of a focus on shift to digital and like exploring different ideas, and some of that is like looking at new authors, and sometimes those don't maybe pan out, but I think it's hard to see where things are going in the future, but it seems right now like there's like a shift in from old systems to trying to figure out a way to work in like post-pandemic, new economic systems, and part of that is like focusing on either concentrating on existent, massive titles, and then like trying to pool a lot of new variety and hopefully find something new. So, and then of course small publishers like us, we've started cropping up.
No, but building on that, like you said, we're seeing the big guys, for the first time, or not, I guess you could say, really starting to, license quote unquote riskier titles. Not your typical isekai and stuff like that. They're doing stuff that we would not expect. For example, like Viz just announced the Dragon Quest Dai's Adventure, and I expected it. I've been expecting it for years. However, I was very happy and very surprised that it came, because now it needed to. I thought it would because of the anime, but I was also very surprised because it's like one of the biggest Jump series, and it has never been touched in English. So, I was really happy for that. But I think in general, we're seeing Seven Seas, Yen, starting to do some different titles. Denpa, like Emma was saying, is definitely a great publisher, and they have, their hands in a wide variety of series and genres and just everything going on. And really also looking forward to their, they're doing, those Moto Hagio titles. Lil Leo is coming out, which I'm really excited for. And then they're also, they were 11.
Yeah.
They're going to do a reprint of that, which is great because, I remember seeing those when I was younger, and I never had a chance to get them. So I'm really looking forward to a reprint. So I was like, oh, hell yeah. I think it's interesting. And then also to build on what I was saying with on the Japanese side of thing, and how reading is changing in a sense, and how to get with the times, I guess you could say, and what are the readers doing? These new reading sites, legal reading sites, I should say, popping up, and them finding new ways to get readers. First X amount of chapters free, then you have to pay per chapter after and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see the trend in how people are actually consuming manga. Digital isn't as big over here in the West, I would say, as it probably is in Japan. It's not exactly the same thing, but then you've got, let's say like Futakiya, which licenses just strictly BL and has a huge catalog that keeps growing. So people are liking that, but print is definitely king over here. So it's kind of definitely different in that sense.
To, I think, just expand a little bit on that as well. We have Kodansha is sort of at the forefront of this, in that they do have a very large digital catalog, which they sometimes transition to print, dependent on sales. It's a little bit like pulling teeth, I think, for them, actually getting people.
Tokyo Revengers.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. But I always have the attitude, because especially when, like, Seven Seas, for example, has these big licensing announcement events over the course of a week, and there's 25 different titles that they announce over 5 days, and a lot of people always seem to be quite upset that there's a lot of isekai, there's a lot of ecchi or whatever else it may be, to which a lot of that stuff isn't particularly what I buy and read. It's not really my particular interests, but I'm always of the opinion, and always have been of the opinion, that stuff, like, that's what sells well, right? Like, they're making money off of that, and that's what funds all the other interesting, weird stuff, unpopular stuff that I may be then am more interested in, right? New York isn't necessarily going to be a massive seller for Yen, but
I can't wait.
I'm so excited, and I'm sure that the 13 different isekais that they have are helping, catch the lost sales, or like making up the difference for that. And again, Seven Seas is pretty much the same. But the fact that we are not only just seeing weird, unusual, and unexpected license, the fact that, Fist of the North Star has just recently gotten a re-release from Viz, when for a long time people just thought it wasn't possible. The fact that Dempa is will be releasing March Comes In Like a Lion is what, I was so excited with that one, and despite, Chika Umino being an established author, thanks to Honey and Clover, that series has always been like a much wanted one for me. But it's just it's always been seen, I think, as a little bit too Japanese, a little bit too, like, it's shogi, and do we really, how do we market this? But because of how, I guess, healthy the manga industry is right now, publishers can take a bit more of those risks, and they have seen, that people will support them if those things are available. So I think we're in a very interesting time, manga-wise, and as we've seen from the numbers, thanks to the pandemic and everyone being stuck inside and nothing to do but read, manga sales have gone up exponentially as well, which hasn't hurt the market. So it's interesting. We'll see how things play out over the next couple of years as well, because we're in a very different position than the market was, as you said, 2, 3, even 5 years ago. So
I think that I've said in the past that this decade in general, we're going to see a lot of licenses, especially in the West, of things that, I think it's starting to broaden a little bit. A lot, I should say, not even just a little bit. Just the way anime and manga in general are accessed. Simulpubs are big now. I think we're going to see a lot of good things coming out, not just from, myself and Glacier Bay, but just in general, industry-wide. Like, it's going to be great. I think there's going to be a lot of, not just stuff coming out, but accessibility. I think there are a lot more ways to read manga legally, and to obtain it, and to purchase it, and all that good jazz. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. Hopefully, shipping and stuff like that gets a little better on all fronts. So then maybe that'll be a little better there. But it's just, I think it's interesting. Like you said, it's definitely something we haven't seen before, in a sense of, the boom's pretty cool to see. I went to Barnes and Noble the other day, the bookstore here, and they were pretty well stocked. However, I've never seen that many people in the manga section before. So that was really cool to see. It was really nice, because I've collected I'm 31 since I was 13, and it's usually just me over there. So, it was pretty cool. So it was like, I mean, I don't talk to people too often, so I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I grabbed my book and I left. I got my Kirby manga and I was good to go. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's refreshing. Honestly, I think it's really refreshing because for a while there, I mean, everything kind of went south, and then Tokyo Pop did their thing, and so then they went. It was just a mess, and then everything got kind of stagnant, and nothing really. I mean, I wouldn't say nothing good came out. That's wrong to say. But it was just like, I don't know, it kind of took a while to gain momentum again.
Yeah, playing it safe for a very long time.
Definitely. So yeah, like you were saying, keep buying your isekai manga, please, because it helps out those smaller series from those larger please. So, when I think about, I mean, some of them are so long. Like I was reading, I was at the library the other day, and they had like a random volume, like volume 12 or something, of the Shield Hero one.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, holy cow, like, it's like, I'm glad to see it's still running in English, because it didn't get, like, axed, the publication didn't get axed halfway through or anything. It's like, that's crazy. Like, I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that. But I didn't think it would, because a lot of the times I keep thinking of back in the day, think of, like, CMX as a publisher.
Yeah.
They kind of like, I was at the store the other day and they had some old CMX titles. I'm like, wow, like a lot of these aren't finished.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
Even Viz, dropped things like Gintama, which now would be kind of crazy to comprehend that you would drop such a huge popular title.
Right. Right.
But it is a difficult series to translate because it is very joke gag focused. But the money wasn't there, and unfortunately, it is one that I think has a higher percentage of being resumed by Viz compared to some of the other stuff that they've dropped. But I don't quote me on that one because I do think it's had its chance, its attempt, and I think we are, again, it's a testament to the health of the market that. A lot of these titles that are long, that are kind of by the numbers, samey, whatever else, are seeing the entirety of them getting completed, or titles that are longer and riskier not being dropped midway because they're not selling. Obviously compared to a Swan or even Twin Speaker, where they had to quickly squish everything together to get the last 3-4 books out. So yeah, oh man, times have been rough for us over the years, but we are in a much healthier spot, I think. And with that, I think we come to our final question for both of our guests as well, of course. How does your company differ from non-small press approaching creators? Well, I guess approaching creators we've talked about, but more specifically, I guess print runs and reprints, and the challenges with that.
Well, so far, I mean, I've got a couple things coming out in print towards the end of the year. However, being a smaller publisher, it is understood that, our print runs may be a bit smaller than your traditional publisher. And that's of course disclosed during contracting and stuff like that. So it's understood and, definitely approved and everything like that. So, like we've said, we don't work with distributors and stuff like that in that sense. But I mean, everyone so far that we've worked with is fine with it and seems to understand that, there are certain, publishers in Japan that are doing, smaller print runs of things, more of specialty things, however, but smaller print runs in general. And it seems to be working out, I guess. So it's definitely understood. And I think that us in particular, we work very closely with our authors. So it's nice to get their input and their, feedback on everything for sure.
I guess. Yeah, obviously a lot of what I'll have to say is pretty much similar. Your print runs are going to be smaller. I think thinking about reprints for, in general, like, people often wonder, well, will XYZ thing get reprinted? And I think the same, issues from a larger publisher to a smaller publisher are going to transfer. If anything, I would think it's kind of a little harder to arrange for reprints. So there are, like, just a lot of factors involved. I'm trying to think of what, if I can say something without being too specific. In general, like, if you're kind of thinking about, like, whether or not you can afford to reprint something, you can be looking at something and be like, well, if I'm going to reprint this, maybe I need to, like, print another, 500 copies or something. That's just a number I made up. But maybe I might only sell, like, based on, sales from the last, year and a half or something, I might only sell another 50 or 100 copies in the next several years. So it's like, and then you have to think about, well, I have to, like, keep the books, I have to, like, maintain them or something, I have to, like, figure out what to do with them. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, I think, if anything, the issue with reprints is, it's always something across the board, no matter what size publisher, it's always a concern. But the nice thing about working, like, directly with authors in many cases is it's sometimes a little simpler if it's possible to do a digital version, which might help if reprints aren't possible, keep that title available. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is reprints are tough. It's not like reprints are, like, contractually not possible or something. I guess I would say I do get some reprint requests for, like, Glaolia, but it's a little more difficult in that case because let me put it this way: if I license a title from an author or a publisher and I want to reprint it, it's either already in the contract that it can be reprinted, or I go and I ask them, can we reprint, and we come to an arrangement. If I want to reprint Glaolia, I talk to at least 13 different people, usually, about whether or not it's okay to reprint. Some of them, maybe I already have an agreement that reprinting is okay. But others, especially if it's a story that I had to come to an arrangement with the publisher because the story was actually published by them, in that case, maybe they have restrictions on what they feel is appropriate for how many print runs can be done or how many copies can be printed, which is, fine and understandable. And so, like, I would say that, there's just, like, so for some specific titles, it can get complicated because you have to, like, get approval from a lot of different parties. And then you look at the interest, and maybe, you have, like, received interest from, like, 30 or 40 different people, but you're going to need to, like, sell, like, 350, 400 copies before you break even. That's like, anyhow. So I don't take those numbers too literally, but it's amalgamated experience. But reprinting is tough, is my perspective so far. So, I guess, how does your company differ from, I pulled up the page to make sure I was actually answering the question. How does your company differ from non-small press? For non-small press, typically a publisher is going and talking to another publisher. And so you're not necessarily working with authors so much, which is what Matt and I have done a bunch of so far. Challenges, print runs are difficult. Getting print priority is a little difficult as well right now, just because of how busy printers are. I have not ever been working with a printer that does, mainly manga printing, so I'm not really competing in that sense for print time with a large manga printer, but I have definitely noticed, like, all the printers I've worked with and then have talked to lately, their wait time, for jobs is much, much longer because there's so much demand. And then, I guess something that you just maybe don't think about as much, but Matt and I think about every day, I'm sure, is when you're running a small press, you have to be able to do everything. Like, I do design if necessary. I do some lettering sometimes. I do, I have to do. I pack all the. I have someone who helps me pack books now when there's overflow. But in a generic sense, I pack all the orders and ship them and schedule that with the post office and make sure everyone's paid and send financial reports to all the authors. So you wear all the hats, and it's a lot of work. I don't mean that in the sense of complaining, but I would say that's a challenge that you don't think about. I think I saw Ed, who runs Dempa, post this on Twitter a couple days ago about, I don't remember the specifics, but basically he posted that he was spending a lot of time, something along the lines of spending a lot of time just dealing with the finances, the financial side, because of all the new authors and new partners they're working with. And I saw that and I was just like, that 100%. It's like, there's so much.
Yeah, it's, and like you're saying, it's not at all a complaint, by any means. It's honestly, it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, and it's great to see the outcome, and everything that goes into it is definitely at love. But the reporting in general is a real pain in the ass, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of communicating. It really does. It can be, and so I did see that also, and I was like, man, I feel for you, Ed. It's definitely a thing. But and I think that. Yeah, no, that's I'll leave off on that.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add to that. I think, especially in the case of small press, and in regards to both of you, you are sort of also the face of the publisher. So if God forbid, something bad does happen, then you are you are who people
the beast stops.
Recognize. Yes.
Emails, all the email, not I love email, so please email if you like. I don't mind it one bit. But no, I mean, they do sometimes. They come in and it's like you'll get 6, 7 within an hour, and you're like, holy cow, and then you don't hear for days. You're good, but then it's it all, and it's. I'm not, like I said, not complaining one bit. But it's, sometimes, or I was working with one publisher. Or one author, and their publisher, I guess you could say. And some of the responses were a sentence long. They were pretty short. And then I'm like, okay, so then I'd reply, and then I'll get something back that's 2-3 paragraphs. I'm like, oh gosh. So it's just I don't know. It sometimes all comes at once, and it's definitely it's fun to juggle, and it's. I think, like Emma said before, just finding new ways to handle it and new processes and more efficient ways to deal with it. I haven't, our first print book is not out yet, but Emma has warned me 3 times, 4 times now, just wait, just wait. You're going to enjoy it. There's going to be a lot of, I'm fortunate also. I live real close to my post office. So it's on my way out of town. And then I have someone helping me with a little bit of shipping. So it's going to help it work out that way. But I'm looking forward to that for sure.
So exciting.
There's a really specific... I think you'll get this once your second or third book comes out, especially. There's this real fulfillment you can get when someone orders a bunch of difficult books to ship together. And you find a way to finagle them together and send it off. It's kind of like solving a little puzzle.
Oh, I'm looking
Anyhow.
forward to that then. Yeah, I'm all. I like Tetris, so let's do it. Let's do it.
One of the things that I did want to mention, and again coming from like a publishing study background, is that I think a lot of people don't really realize that print runs, even for the large publishers, can be a lot smaller than what they expect, right? So a lot of like people think of print runs in terms of like, oh, this hit 1 million copies sold or whatever. Whereas majority of books, almost all books, typically have a print run of like a couple thousand, 10,000, 20,000 if it's an established author, right? Like if you this is a book that has an established audience, an author who's writing a series, and this is the third book in a trilogy, then of course those print runs are going to be higher because they have previous historical data to look back on. But if it's something, whether it be just an author without a huge fan base, whether it be, whatever, it can't. Publishers, both here in Australia and in the US, from my understanding, is if you've sold 4,000 books, you're really happy. If you sold 10,000 books, you are ecstatic, right? And then you might prompt a reprint. So it can be like, people don't necessarily think, and I'm not sure, like I obviously don't have the specifics when it comes to manga in particular. These are just like novel stats. But Australia, we have 4,000 books released here annually, across the board. So from large publishers, from indie publishers, self-published works, 4,000, which, considering that we only have a population of 25 million, is a whole bunch of books, right? And not every book is going to sell at the same rate as another. And again, it goes back into like, buy the isekai because that will sell the 10,000 copies.
Yeah.
So that New York, which may sell 1,000, can be finished, can get through. It is very relative, and a lot of those, even the big publishers, whether it be like Penguin Random House or Simon & Schuster, they rely on the 20 million copies sold books to make up the difference for everything else that they put out. So when talking about reprints and I guess publishing in general, I think a lot of people don't realize that, publishing is a hard business. Like, it's a lot of work for not necessarily high returns. Any returns. So, even if you are like one of the largest publishing companies in the world, you're not necessarily making a profit on all and most of the books that you put out. So,
a bit of perspective. Some of our books have like public print run information just to stand in contrast to those numbers, so you can really see the small press element. Like Sleepy Child and That Child, I think, were print runs of like each time we reprinted those. Sorry, but each printing was, I think the first printing was like 100 copies. I think the second printing we did, I don't remember now, 120 or 150, just to kind of keep them around a little longer because it's expensive. And we used some like nice paper for the covers, so, and I didn't want to alter anything to make it a little cheaper, so I just figured, print a couple more and keep it around. But what other ones? Like Glaolia 1 was like 300 and Glaolia 2 was 500, and those sold they sold really well. I'm like really happy with that, but they didn't sell well enough that like, I'm like, oh, I can afford to like drop $10,000 and print another 500 or something, and it'll sell out in the next year or two or something. So, the whole financial scale is a little smaller, so yeah, we're like, for most of our titles, we're really, Glacier Bay Books is not at the point where we're like printing runs in the thousands, so not at this point in time. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, that's why. Speaking of, let me hype Matt's Kino books. He opened pre-order for it a couple days ago. I don't know. Time is really hard to track right now, but very recently, and I think it's coming out much later this year, which is great because that gives him a lot of time to collect pre-orders and know how many books he can afford to print. In as a general comment.
Yeah, no, and for sure. I mean, thanks for touching on that specifically, though, because, I mean, the pre-orders help. I mean, and like Emma said before, buying directly through your publisher as opposed to somewhere else, not directly, the direct purchase really does help out. Because, yeah, I mean, contractually, I have to print X amount of copies, and then, like we're saying, reprints, no matter how big you are, I mean, you have to see if they're feasible or not. I mean, if you're moving that many copies in 8 months, I mean, how long is it going to take to move the next amount of copies? I mean, it's all about return. And, like we were just saying, the profit margins aren't exactly what some may think they are. And also want to, that in a sense, and like this, that we're also, there's more to it than just licensing it for an English release. Like, we're also translating it, editing it, doing the lettering. I mean, there's costs in that as well. So that's an added cost. It's not like an original license of some sort. So like that's an added cost that sometimes people don't factor in. So for sure.
I want to point out, like earlier we touched on, like, you both started from scratch, and so really anyone can do a good job, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Like, you put in the time and effort, and work hard at it. You can get good at it. You can figure out a way. But just to align expectations, at least with my experience, and I know I print like really wacky indie stuff that like is not necessarily going to be a huge seller, but my experience at least is you go into this stuff for the love, not for the financial rewards, because they are not there. There's a lot of love in indie publishing, but there's not a lot of financial returns. So
it's like 90% love at this point. So it's no.
Yes.
No. That, and then also speaking of like sales in general, digital, of course, sells a bit differently than print. So like from my perspective, I started off heavily digital. So, to where, let me pause on that, not just digital, but on our own directly from our website, DRM free, not on Kindle, not on Bookwalker, Kobo, any of that good stuff. Just because, I mean, again, going back to buying direct, that's more money, to the author. I mean, Kyuta, I always use Pop Life as an example. Kyuta, because as of now, Pop Life is definitely our best seller. Both Volume 1 and 2 sell great. And they're still selling, which I'm really happy to see. But, like, she gets a good chunk of each sale. And, I mean, it's great that we're able to do that because there's no middleman. There's not someone else getting a cut out of that. And granted, we're not selling tens of thousands of copies. It's still nice that we're able to do that. And
I wanted to expand on that for a bit, actually, because that was a really good point about small press versus large press and working with creators. So with works that I'm, so if I release something digitally, and I'm working with the creator specifically, which is for most, I think all of the digital titles that we have out is the case right now, then there are a lot of advantages to digital sales to our site. Like Matt just pointed out, there's no middleman, basically like minus transaction fees, 100%. So, 90-something% of that amount is like goes directly to us and then to the author. And the advantage of that is with, the platform fees could be much higher, 20 is not realistic except for certain circumstances, but maybe like 30 plus easily, 30 or 40 or more percent to sell on a platform. And so I don't want to say the exact number, but I give a very, very generous or competitive, or whichever adjective you want to use, royalty on digital sales to authors, because that platform fee through our website, that platform fee doesn't apply, and I can just give, add that to the royalty. So I know people don't necessarily like buying digital, but in as much quantity, but I can assure you, anyone who's purchasing digital books through our website, that the lion's share of that is actually going directly to the author. Like they're getting a really big chunk on royalties, which is really awesome. I love sending them that royalty amount. It's really great.
I agree too. I'm in the same boat as you there. I mean, I think it's definitely, it, I guess, brings me joy, you could say, to be able to do that, because it's, digitally, there's no print cost to worry about either, on top of definitely, as you're saying, the platform fees, because those are just, I mean, they are a lot. I mean, it makes sense for someone that's a very large publisher, but for someone small like us, it really eats into the cost. So yeah, definitely, I agree with you on that there. And yeah, same here. I like to give a nice portion there of digital sales to the author, so it really works out.
It's fantastic to hear, and I think that's creator support is such a big topic within the manga reading and manga buying community, and even those who don't necessarily get their manga in the legal sense. There's always the argument of, how do we support a creator? It's like, well, you buy their work. But, people don't like to hear that. But not to get into that topic. It is always, that is one of the great, the great things of the directness of support, because that is something that matters to a lot of people. Knowing that their money is going to, hopefully the person who, for me, hopefully the people who are bringing this stuff over, as well as the creator themselves, because it is a team effort. It's not just received unto us English speakers without the translation, lettering, everything else that we've talked about throughout this podcast already. Again, why it is important to highlight those really important roles throughout the entire publishing process. But with that, we have finished with all of our questions. There was a lot, and as always, thank you guys so much for your wonderful questions. We always appreciate it. Hopefully they were all right for our guests. not too concerning. We can just wrap it up here. I think we've reached the end.
Here, let me throw a couple things out. The first thing is, this occurred to me after the fact, but we were talking about publishing growing and stuff like that, and there's lots of interesting things happening, outside of the mainstream coverage, I guess is how I'd say. It's not necessarily been so heavily publicized, but I'm working with Holmberg on F, and he's started a bunch of smaller projects, with pretty small publishers. Like he's publishing a Tadaotsuke work with Floating World Comics, I think, which is like a indie comics bookshop in the U.S., which also publishes works from anywhere, like European authors, U.S. authors, just all over the place. But I think this is their first time with Japanese work. And then Holmberg put out a book on translation, and with Bubbles, which is kind of a collection of his essays and his Instagram essays, I should say. But the reason I'm mentioning that is because he's now working on a very old, like 1940s republication or first English edition of a baseball manga. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you're interested in indie and small press, keep digging, because there's like interesting things happening all over the place. Especially, it feels like, especially lately, in indie comics, but then also in manga with small publishers and individuals like doing a lot of interesting work. And then also, I guess, because I mentioned that, let me plug F, which is the book Holmberg translated for Glacier Bay, and I'm hoping to make, we're doing the final edit pass. Fingers crossed there's no issues. We've, already it's been sent out for approval with author. I'm hoping to make a print announcement and release the cover, any day now is what I want to say, but any day now, as soon as we get those boxes checked. So if you like alternative manga or indie comics, or are interested in contemporary issues in Japan, because it's about it's kind of reflecting on the response to the Fukushima disaster, the earthquake, nuclear disaster, which is 10 years ago now. So very contemporary work and very contemporary issues. Or if you're a fan of Holmberg, basically if you like anything that we've talked about, especially in the last couple of minutes, you should check out this work when it comes out. So, quick plug for that.
Very excited. Very excited.
Let me then, I guess I'll plug two then real quick. So, yeah, we have, so our first print title, When Pink Rain Falls, is actually a short 38-page BL title. Should be out soon. It's a little bit delayed because of printers. However, we do have some boxes coming this week. So it just depends. I just got a notification of that. However, like I've said before, we did partner with Yaoi Crate. They will get their copies first, due to that's just the way it's going to be. Soon as they get fulfilled, that's when we're going to go ahead and open up those pre-orders. And they'll get shipped out quickly after pre-orders. I'll leave pre-orders up for a very short amount of time, and then just start sending them out. There are plenty to sell, so there's no constraints on that. So yeah, digital print should be at a retailer, not sure who yet, but overseas in the Philippines, actually. Cool. I've got one I'm speaking with, and maybe even another now. So we'll see there. And then, of course, big news with our Hideshi Hino book coming out in November, City of Pigs. That's available for pre-order now. It does ship directly from us, like we've been saying. Shipping may, check out the shipping. It does go international. However, like we were saying, there are some prices adjustments there that, unfortunately, we have no control over with the shipping prices. So it's just the way it is, unfortunately, right now. However, we do have a little pre-order bonus coming along with it. You will get Chapter 1 as a PDF as soon as it's ready for everyone to see, as well as I'm going to announce another pre-order bonus. I just have not yet. It's going to be an art print. I will say that much. Like just a small, like postcard size. More info coming soon on that. Yeah, that I wasn't going to, but the pre-orders so far, I will say, are phenomenal. I didn't think that we would be getting as many pre-orders as we are. So I'm very pleased with that, and it's only right to do the print. It's going to be great. So that'll be coming out. It's just going to be postcard size. So yeah, definitely look forward to that. We have some, of course, digital titles coming out, but going forward, most of our titles will be released both print and digitally. And we will have an announcement sometime by the end of July. I don't know if this will be out by then, but
hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah. Oh yeah, no. We got no. Sorry, it's the 24th. We got time. So yeah, no. So definitely some announcements. At least, yes. Yeah, I know I've got at least 2 things. But we'll see. We'll see how many more I can
super
rack
exciting.
up there.
Really cool. Thank you both for that, and thank you both for joining both myself and Ray, who obviously has gone to keep herself healthy. We do really appreciate you coming to join us on this month's podcast, and I think great
conversation.
Hopefully you feel the same.
I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. It was great.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully be back here again sometime.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, for everyone listening, as I mentioned at the beginning, the websites for both Glacier Bay Books and Starfruit Books will be in the description below. I'll also put in the Twitter for both of the publishers as well. Next month's topic, we will be talking about music manga. So manga focused on music, featuring music of all sorts, I'm sure. Rock, classical, whatever else. And I guess also discuss the maybe difficulties of featuring an audio, art through art like image, and how that translates through manga and comics. And I think we can talk a little bit about adaptation in that sense as well. So, of course, as always, leave your questions either in the comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube, or when I post my tweet asking for questions on my Twitter, which is @collectingg. Again, will be in the description as always. You can listen to this podcast on my channel here, Simply G on YouTube, or, of course, on pretty much every podcasting platform. Anchor FM, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, that they have one, under, of course, Read Right to Left. And although she is not here, she is still with us in spirit. Ray, you can find on her channel Whimsical Pictures on YouTube, or, of course, at Whimsical Pics on Twitter. We are always there, and you can talk to us and DM us and see what we're screaming about in regards to manga all the time. But, yes, so with that, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you both Matt and Emma for joining us for this month's podcast, and we will see you, listeners, in the next one.
Bye. Thanks again.
Bye.